Welcome to Risk Takers Unleashed. My guest today is retail and CPG industry strategist and marketing technology expert Michael Klein. In today's podcast, we will delve into topics including current market environment, the holiday retail season, and talk about where Michael sees things going from here. Buckle your seatbelts, let's go. Welcome again to Risk Takers Unleashed. Today I have the pleasure of speaking with Michael Klein of Klein for Retail Consulting. Michael is a strategic business advisor with deep subject matter expertise in the retail, luxury, and consumer sectors. He is an industry thought leader in global and digital commerce and marketing technology, as well as regular contributor to leading industry events. He works with technology providers, agencies, retailers, consumer brands, and trade associations to improve their business strategies, storytelling, and go-to-market messaging to support business development and pipeline generation. Prior to his starting his consulting practice in 2023, Michael was Global Director of Industry Strategy and Marketing for retail, travel, and consumer goods, all within the Adobe Digital Experience business unit from 2011 through 2022. Michael was responsible for creating, progressing, and closing pipeline as a trusted executive advisor to Adobe's enterprise clients in the sector. Michael's contributions produced a 167% increase in annual recurring revenue for consumer industries. He began his career on the shop floor and worked his way up to the corporate office as a senior merchant and marketer for esteemed brands such as Williams-Sonoma, Harry & David, Discovery Channel Stores, eLuxury.com, part of LVMH, Dean & DeLuca, and Wine.com. Michael is an active member of the National Retail Federation Digital Council. And there's my office assistant, Milo, behind me helping out with the podcast here. I had the great pleasure of working with Michael. During my own Adobe tenure, I was a teammate and peer of his, covering media, entertainment, and telecom sectors on my side. Michael is not only a colleague of mine, I consider him a close personal friend. Michael, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you. It's great to be here and looking forward to our time together, and maybe my King, Red, or Billy in my house may join us at some time. I've got 3 canines running around in my home. Good thing we're not in the same room because they'd be chasing Milo around the room.
I'm sure he'd love it, actually. So that's great. Yep. There's another one roving around somewhere. So you never know around here. They can erupt into cat fights, what have you. So it's always fun. All I have to do is talk into a microphone and put a camera on myself and he jumps into frame. It's guaranteed. So yeah, good. Yeah, no, hope to see the animals. That would be good. The more the merrier. So good. It's, you and I, talk a lot. We've kind of taken a similar journey, I think, in our professional careers, just covering really different market segments. And you're one of these people that I talk to. I don't come away from a conversation with you without learning something. And so you're a treasured friend of mine, not only with regards to that, but we have a lot of common interests and everything. I was wondering if you could kind of walk through your professional journey, what got you to here. I loved in the intro the idea of working your way up from the shop floor. My path is not dissimilar. I love this kind of ground up approach. And you hear these stories of somebody worked on the, fries or the grill at McDonald's and became the CEO, and these things. I think, people forget it's a journey, right? And we're kind of traveling through this continuum. You don't wake up one day as a subject matter expert in retail and luxury. You've kind of earned those stripes. And so I was wondering if you could kind of, talk us through what the journey's been to you, some of the high points, maybe the low points that you learned from.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And I always enjoy kind of reminiscing on how I got to where I am today. Like you said in my bio, I started on the shop floor. I grew up in New York City.
Yeah.
I lived in Manhattan, and my first job was working the deli counter and the slicer in New York City, and started that way. It then was how I was able to support my partying activities in college and Worked through university and part-time managing a cheese shop up in the Chestnut Hill Mall in Massachusetts when I went to school at Brandeis. And when I got out of school, excuse me, I started working for a catering company. That lasted for a couple of years, continuing to work on the shop floor as the manager of Newman and Bogdanoff Caterers on the Upper East Side. Started to learn more and more about the business, and then had an opportunity to move to the wholesale side of the business. I'd worked for Dean & DeLuca 2 times in my career, and that was the first time I joined Dean & DeLuca. And I was knocking on doors at the 5-star white tablecloth restaurants of New York City. I have some really interesting stories from that time in my life because I was able to meet early in their careers some of the celebrity chefs that we know today, whether it's Bobby Flay, Daniel Boulud, John George von Richten, Jeffrey Zakarian. I was selling them products. I had great opportunity and great stories selling to some of the best chefs in New York City, selling olive oils and truffles and caviar, and then moved over back into merchandising with Balducci's.
Yep.
I'm not going to go through every single stop, but the lesson here was that I really got to roll up my sleeves and understand what it was like to be on that side of the counter. Moved west with my family and my 2-month-old son when I moved to Harry and David.
Yeah.
And that's when I really started to understand direct to consumer and what it was like to be a database marketer, because Harry and David is probably, in my opinion, one of the most sophisticated database marketers that I had worked with at that point in my career, where they really understood list management. They understood what it took to vary books and test books and covers and page layouts. Really learned the art and the science of database marketing and direct-to-consumer catalog, which, as many of us know, is really what led to the internet. Catalog retail was the harbinger to what we saw as the internet. And when I was at Harry and David, and this is back in 97, 98, my manager came to me and said, "You're now going to be responsible for this thing called the internet."
Right.
And those were the days where we didn't have teams specifically set up for .com because it was so new.
Oh yeah.
And we also, I think we've also come a little full circle as we're talking about this, where those days the person that was merchandising either the store or the catalog was also responsible for the web.
That's right.
We matured at some point, and then we had teams that were dedicated to merchandising the internet. The idea of omni-channel, multi-channel, hybrid retail, whatever you want to call it, has now, I think, pivoted us back to where we were in those days, because we can't have teams that are siloed off into different parts of the business. And I see quite often, more often than not, the teams are now coming together and they're under one umbrella so that you can actually deliver to a customer a seamless experience. So that's the late 90s. I then moved to California from Oregon in 99 for Louis Vuitton, the e-luxury program. Stupid money was being spent at that time.
I'm sure.
Flying to France at the drop of a hat, first class on Air France, drinking Dom Perignon and eating caviar on my way over there.
I would have assumed Moet, actually, but Dom Perignon will do.
Well, Dom Perignon is part of the Moet Chandon house.
It's in the umbrella. I learn something every time I talk to you. I said that, and there we are.
Yeah, Dom Perignon is the tête de cuvée of Moet Chandon.
That makes a long trip a little bit more tolerable, doesn't it? I think.
Oh, without a doubt. And whether it was the web van deliveries that came to the office, or Yeah, those were certainly interesting times in the late 90s and 2000, 2001, when everybody was throwing stupid money at anything that
Ah,
had a .com at the end of it.
glorious.
Yeah, and then had my first experience of being downsized
Yeah.
and being part of a reduction in force.
Yep.
I always knew that I'd be less than 10% of the business because we were so
Yep.
focused on fashion and beauty, and I was the
Yep.
food and wine guy,
Yep.
where I still had a $50 million business that was on paper,
Yeah.
never really happened.
Yeah.
So I that was kind of when we think about risk, and I definitely took
Yeah.
some of my early risks by moving my family from one
Yeah.
state to another. There was another .com in between
Yeah.
all of this, and but I thought, and I still think that I was kind of a few years ahead of my time in what I was seeing out there and what I thought the possibilities were, and what we often talk about, the art of the possible.
Yeah.
I remember when I was first at eLuxury and we were going out to vendors to get them on board and have them feature their products on the website. I had a CD-ROM that I would throw into my laptop that showed, and this is in 1999, 2000,
Yeah.
it showed spinning shoes, and you could see a shoe in 3D,
Oh yeah. It's
which, given
revolutionary at that
bandwidth at
point.
that time,
Yeah.
it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah. No.
It was way ahead of where we actually could deliver on that promise from a customer experience and technology perspective. But we
Yeah.
were showing what we could do for a brand like Christian Louboutin or Dom Perignon or
Yeah.
Baccarat or any of these high-end luxury brands, not only in fashion and beauty, but in home and food and
Yeah.
gourmet products.
Sure.
So I then learned the hard lesson of what is on paper doesn't always necessarily come to fruition.
Indeed.
Spent some time on my own. 2001 was a tough year because that's when I left eLuxury and they started doing their reductions.
Yeah.
And 9/11 hit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it took everybody for a loop in terms of
Yeah.
not only personally but professionally.
Yes.
Uh, I I did odd jobs,
Yeah.
doing different things, primarily in food and wine,
Yeah.
serving and catering, you name it, just to make
Sure.
ends meet.
Yeah.
And then in 2002, when things started to come back again and there was a bit of a rebound, I found myself at Williams Sonoma.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I always had this kind of, looking from the window and looking inside to Williams Sonoma and wanted to work there. And it was a great company.
Yeah.
I certainly had some challenges in terms of the culture and the politics that happened there.
Yeah.
I always say that the best thing that ever happened to me at Williams Sonoma is that's where I met my wife. My
Right.
wife was the head of store operations, and we met in the halls of Williams Sonoma corporate.
That's great.
But again, I learned so much in a very short period of time there about multi-store retail,
Yeah.
what it takes to get products in the door and out the door with
Yeah.
800 locations across the United States. And at that time, when I was there, we were expanding
Yeah.
internationally into Canada, which was pretty amazing, and more lessons learned, especially from a consumer package goods perspective because
Yeah.
of the labeling requirements. I was
Sure.
the candy man.
Yeah. Right.
So
Right.
I was responsible. My categories were seasonal food and books, and so peppermint bark, ice cream kits, pumpkin spice bread, all those great products that
The
still
good
live
stuff.
to today
Yeah.
that were under the Williams Sonoma label. And then the other thing that was I always talk about, which was a great experience, was I was the head of cookbooks. So I got to sit side by side with Chuck Williams
Oh, cool.
and edit the Williams-Sonoma cookbooks for 2 years,
Oh,
which
that's
was
awesome.
pretty cool and pretty
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
I've been very fortunate over my career, whether it was at Dean and DeLuca, Balducci's,
Yeah.
Williams-Sonoma, that
Yeah.
I worked directly for those founders, those pioneers of
Yeah.
specialty food. And up until that point in my career, I was very much, I was a food guy. I was,
Yeah.
retail food was what I lived and breathed. And then after a few years of working that and doing some more consulting, uh, worked on a variety of catalogs, specialty food companies, Clearbrook Farms, got involved with wine.com.
Yeah.
I then moved to the other side of the business with Discovery Channel. Got into toys and fan gear and, kind of
Yeah.
your side of the business, right?
Sure.
With media and entertainment.
Yeah.
So learned more about that. And then 2008, fast forward, I joined Mercado and then Omniture, and have now been on the tech side of retail and consumer goods for the past 14 years. And
Yeah.
the one thing that I've always learned, and I think I learned this early, I'll always recognize Andy Balducci, because when I worked for Andy Balducci, he was probably about 70 years old.
Yeah.
And while he was very set in his ways, he always was able to listen. And he gave everybody the floor. Now, whether or not he agreed with you, and I have stories of him throwing trays of dried fruit at me because he didn't like the way they were merchandised.
Oh dear.
But and yeah, he was certainly a bit eccentric and very set in the way he wanted things done. But he always respected other people's opinion and healthy dialogue, healthy conversation, which I think is something that I feel that I've been able to bring forward in my career. And sometimes that comes off as being maybe a little contentious or combative, but for me, it's always about trying to get to the best result for the business and for the customer. And sometimes that means having hard conversations. And I've had a great journey when you and I worked together at Adobe, and have been able to travel the world, work with some of the best brands out there, understanding what their strategies were. So I've had the fortunate risk-taking of being with some startups and some small companies, and I've been under the umbrella of some large, well-established, multi-billion-dollar companies that I had to take different type of risks in order to maintain my position and survive for over a decade at a place like Adobe. So it's been an interesting journey, and has brought me to today, where I get to work with a continued bunch of different customers, and have put my shingle out there since May.
That's great. You touch on so many things that really resonate with me. The listening thing, I think, is huge. And you hear this from really early on in your career, working in most professional environments. Be a good listener. You really must sharpen your listening skills. And then you realize how seldom it actually happens in practice. And you work with people who you think they're listening, or you feel like maybe you made an impact in a conversation you had, and you realize by their actions later, or something happens where you come to the, I guess, conclusion that perhaps they weren't listening so well, or gave the guise of giving you an audience, but in fact that was never a consideration for them, whatever outcome it is. And so I think I have come to treasure that in people that I work with now, and I look for it, as I'm sure you do, and it means everything to me. You are underselling yourself. You're a great listener, and I think it's a skill to be developed. I hope that I've refined it throughout the years, but I look for that in people that I work with, because it really is. If we're going to work in teams, you must consider the team input. Otherwise, why not just do a solo thing? It's just easier. It's Andres Segovia just sat on the stage. He played his guitar. He didn't have to worry about the band, other people's feelings. He just did his thing, and maybe he knew this is the way to express myself. And then, there's an orchestra somewhere where there's 97 people really figuring out how to work together. They're listening to each other. So I love that metaphor, and that never goes away. I don't see a world where that ever goes away, and that's a huge part of it. The Dean and DeLuca, I used to love that place, and we went back out to Manhattan for Adobe, and I didn't realize that it had closed down. So I'm walking around looking for Dean and DeLuca, and then, finally asked someone, I know there was a Dean and DeLuca here. What happened? You're like, oh, they closed. And it struck me like, this is a different Manhattan. I mean, this would have been 2019, 2018. They closed a few years before. And it seemed to me to be a real paradigm shift in, certainly, high-end food and beverage products, but just for the city in general, where it was kind of, wow, we're moving out of what I felt was refined niche types of stores into a little bit more of a big box environment. Fast forward to, kind of the rail yards in Hell's Kitchen that they've developed. This whole, it's a different world now, I think, Manhattan. And you've had this, I think, career arc that's taken you through a lot of different retail paradigms, and you touch on that a lot in your background. It's really kind of, as someone who is, I think, also an aesthete, I enjoy good wine, good food, the whole thing. You and I share that passion. It's kind of interesting to watch things change and emerge.
Yeah, I don't know if it's so much a product of Manhattan or the climate of retail and commerce in Manhattan.
Yeah.
Knowing enough of what's gone on in the background, and if you look at the history of Dean and DeLuca and Balducci's as well, they've been tossed around a bit by different holding companies, both here in the U.S. as well as out of Asia.
Yeah.
And a lot of those holding companies really did not do the right thing by those brands.
Yeah.
And the irony is that you can't find a Dean and DeLuca in New York.
Yeah.
But you can find a Dean and DeLuca in Tokyo.
It's like Carnegie Deli, right? The same thing, where I think they just moved it to Las Vegas or licensed the brand, but
that's a license deal, right? Exactly.
But
and probably they bought some recipes.
It broke my heart, Yeah.
I think there's a lot behind the scenes that we don't see, and those businesses are not easy to run when you think about high-end perishable food, and it's not cookie cutter like a grocery store, and whether it's a Kroger or Ralph's or even a Whole Foods. So there are still pockets of, whether it be Fairway, Zabar's, there's still some legacy gourmet food retailers in New York City. But I think that some of those products have become more ubiquitous. And, you couldn't, in the 70s or 80s, 90s, you couldn't find a bottle of balsamic vinegar in every supermarket.
No.
Now you can. It's everywhere, right? You can get a great bag of pasta, De Cecco or other brands at a supermarket, and you don't have to go out of your way to get some of those products. So, I think it's definitely a different world, and online has certainly also, I'm sure, taken a bite out of that as well, where I go direct to consumer. I'm here in Oakland, California, and once or twice a year I indulge in white truffles, and I get them in the mail through the truffle guy that I used to work with that sold them to Dean and DeLuca. So I don't have to go to the middleman. I can go right to the source.
Oh, that's a good connection to have right there. It's I was thinking to myself, there was a point in history, and I think we discussed this. I was in the wine business for a time back in the early 90s, 100 years ago. This shocked me even then. The most sold wine at one point, and I think it was up to about the late 70s in the United States, was Gallo Hardy Burgundy. The gallon jug of what was, a mishmash of Central Valley, plonk, generously. But yet, we've seen this kind of, I think, education of consumers. You mentioned kind of a product ubiquity, even at kind of the high end, getting into, what I would certainly consider luxury brands. So distribution is everywhere. Awareness has risen, I think, certainly in no small part to digital marketing and kind of the emergence of a layer of marketing and awareness that sits above retail bricks and mortar. And I want you, again, this is your world. It's maybe talk a little bit about, and you touched on it at the end of your own personal journey, this idea of getting into more of the technology that enables what we're living in now, this idea of the future of stores, online, digital, marketing technologies, things that you and I leverage for our clients, both at Adobe and beyond. I think it's such a unique time, and you have such a unique vision on this. Might be interesting to kind of hear where you pulse check of where we are now. What is it going to look like in the future? These types of things.
Well, I think we've come through an interesting journey of the internet started, especially for retail, in the mid 90s. Amazon 1995, I think, is the date that is well documented on when they really started to make a stamp on the landscape of retail.
Yeah.
So we've gone through these experiences and the evolution of listing pages and what it looks like to sell thousands of goods. It certainly is not a very high end. For the most part, for many years, it was a very kind of vanilla, bland experience. And it didn't, I've always been an advocate for the store. Our friend Mark Andreessen was well quoted that stores would eventually become dinosaurs. And I think he mentioned that nearly 20 years ago now. But
right.
I never subscribed to that and believe that there is an interesting play between online and offline. And we continue to see that the synergies and the convergence of those two are improving day by day.
Yeah.
And I don't think we can have any conversation around technology or where we're going without talking about AI and Gen AI and how that's going to affect retail in a positive way. We certainly know that there are challenges around privacy, copyright infringement, guardrails around how a brand's product line is going to be represented online and not infringe on another brand's product line using Gen AI. But I think that we are seeing some of these technologies will enhance the product discovery, customer journey. If I'm in the middle of nowhere and I don't have access to that great bottle of wine or that great product, or I can't get to Madison Avenue and go shopping in the boutiques, or even if I need that one, I'm in the middle of a bathroom remodel and I just spent a lot of money online and never went into a showroom to pick out all my fixtures. So whether it's the little screw or the toilet paper holder or the great bottle of wine, access to product is more abundant than ever. There's always going to be this balance between the experience I want and the engagement I want in shopping versus I need something and I want to get it and I want to get it as fast as possible. So I think we're at an interesting tipping point where technology is going to enable us to do either or, and it's not going to be one or the other. It's not going to be 100% online. It's not going to be 100% offline. And it's going to be those who can do both well are going to be the ones that win at the end of the day.
Well, I think certainly when you think in terms of luxury products, there's a visceral connection and feel to the product. In the case of food and wine, there's a tactile quality to it. You certainly want to taste it. All of those things I think are critically important and don't go away. So it turns into that's a great introduction to the product, or it can expand your palette into new areas. And then, of course, you can procure those online once you resonate with a product and can kind of, go, all right, well, I'm going to reorder that. That was a great wine. Let's buy a case of that, or whatever the case may be. But almost like the Tesla model in a way, where you think of there's not really a dealership per se, but you go in, there are a couple of cars, you sit down, you can config your own car on their terminals there with a customer representative, and kind of build that out. So it has reached, I think you're right to point out this hybrid model, because I'm starting to see it more and more. I'm with you. There's something about I'm a guitar guy, so when somebody says, hey, I want to sell you a guitar, well, I've got to sit with it for 10 minutes before I can even begin to assess whether this is going to work for me. They're very personal, right? And I think all that kind of rings true.
You had to mention Tesla, which I can't help but think of that Elon dude who not high on my list, but
are you so you're putting a big X on Elon? Is that what you're doing right now?
Yes.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Speaking of automotive, the other thing that was interesting, and I just had this call today with a prospective client, that automotive is going in a very interesting direction, where the automobile is the biggest computer that's driving around on the highways these days.
Yeah.
The sensors that are available in there, and the idea that I may have to sit for 10 or 15 minutes at a charging station with the EVs. Yeah. And what am I going to do for those 10 or 15 minutes? And there's conversation around bringing more commerce inside of the vehicle, either for, if I'm hands-free, or if I'm on autopilot, or I'm sitting around at a charging station. How do I engage in either entertainment or in shopping while I'm sitting in my vehicle? And I also, I know you mentioned Tesla, but if given all the money that I could spend on a vehicle, I have a friend who just got the EQS, the Mercedes-Benz. Wow, that thing is
pretty good. Yeah.
The technology and the intelligence in that vehicle is off the charts. Off the charts.
I think there's going to be significant competition for Tesla going forward, and I'm hearing some rumblings from BMW and obviously the Mercedes sounds like great advocacy for that.
Yeah,
so
it's not inexpensive though.
Oh
certainly.
No,
it's
they're
6 figures.
They're brutal. I wonder if I don't turn into a dinosaur with this, because I have such a hard time personally. So my brother owns a Tesla, and he's constant. I own a share or two of Elon's stock, and have for a long time. It's been a decent performer, certainly up to the last couple months. And my brother's like, well, why don't you own one? I'm like, oh, well, because I like gasoline, which is horrible to say, and I know I can see the momentum. The tide is definitely shifting, it's there, but there's something, you talk about that visceral quality again, where it's, I don't know, I like hitting the starter button and the, BMW roars to life and the exhaust note and the whole thing. And I don't know.
So it's weird. I have a gas powered car myself, and my son has a hybrid, and I just visited him. Yeah. And I drove his car a few times, and when he was off doing some other things, so I borrowed his car, and I didn't even know the thing was even on.
It's amazing.
Which you eventually get used to. Yeah. But it certainly was a weird experience to hit that button and then wonder, is this thing actually ready to move?
Yeah, it's different, and it is, I think it is look, it's a sea change, in technology, and it's really coming our way. And then the ability to disengage from the driving experience also kind of blows my mind, where I'm old, I like turn off the phone. I'm driving, I'm focused. It's dangerous out there, let's face it. But these sort of autopilot, which is clearly, you talk about, AI and technology changing with all of that, just the whole ability to process code in this way, and the machine learning algorithms that drive this from, it's recognizing a stop sign, it's applying the brakes at the right point so you don't spill your soda on yourself, all these things. I mean, just magic, really, and kind of fun to watch where it all goes. It's with generative AI, I'm seeing some areas, certainly in media and entertainment, where that's coming into play, in terms of, obviously from a production standpoint, it can be incredible. I think over-reliance on it has its own challenges. I see people, in college writing essays and doing all these things, maybe not the best use of it, but certainly, you see where the capabilities are going. Are you seeing things in retail and CPG, like comes to mind for me, something like product customization or like kind of a semi-custom environment? Are there areas that a lot of us aren't thinking about when it comes to retail, CPG, and generative AI?
What we're going to be seeing more is for merchandisers and creatives, product owners, greater capability to test and iterate on new products. That's going to be one area that I definitely believe in.
Yeah.
The capabilities of AI that allow you to create variations of a particular product and be able to put them out there. And also, with some of the well-known Asian retailers that are here now in the United States, like Shein and Temu, they're using AI certainly to create and understand what's happening with the consumer and quickly get product out the door. The idea of fast fashion is faster than ever before.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be one area. The other area, which I'm working with a client right now, that is in user experience and product discovery, is the idea of conversational commerce. 10 years ago, Amazon brought out Alexa, and with this hope of conversation, the promise of conversational commerce, where you're going to be able to talk to Alexa and do all your shopping, and you'd never have to go to a website or lift a finger. It'd all be all voice command. And we know, especially in the early days of Alexa and up until recently, the primary uses of a product like Alexa, a tool like Alexa, was what's the weather, how much, help me time the egg on boiling, or set a timer in the kitchen, or reorder a product that I have already ordered from Amazon. Those are kind of the top three activities that engaged with Alexa. Now, with natural language processing, Gen AI being more capable, the idea of having a digital conversation will evolve and become that much better. Where the preset parameters, the sorry, I didn't understand that, will eventually become extinct, because the machines and the technology, the data behind all of it, and the ability in large language models to answer those questions like a human will evolve and become much better, and allow us to have a better conversation. So personalization, conversational commerce, and then retailers have already been using AI around supply chain forecasting, making sure they put the right product in the right place at the right time. That is just going to accelerate more, because they've already been tapping into parameter-based and structured data AI. And with Gen AI, that's just going to become that much more efficient and faster.
Makes sense. You touched on something in that uh, this whole idea of shipping and logistics, and I know you're a student of kind of macroeconomics, as am I. There are some, I would say, cautionary red flags out there, I think, for us to at least examine. And I'm wondering your thoughts on the impacts to retail CPG. So I'll throw a couple examples out. Both of these were actually somewhat stunning to me to see. Maersk, the shipping line, they were a client of mine while I was at Gartner, actually, announced headcount reductions, I think on the magnitude of 15,000 headcount, coming off of various areas of the company, but definitely in terms of shipping operations, that area, roughly 10+% of the workforce. So non-trivial, to be sure. Here in Nashville, Yellow Trucking announced a bankruptcy a couple months back, and it doesn't look like they're going to come through that as of this writing. And so are these things are these things that we need to worry about going into the 4Q retail holiday season? Are these longer term headwinds? Are these just kind of cautionary cost reduction movements? What are you seeing out of this, and what are you hearing?
I think that there's a variety of factors that contribute to what you've seen with the Maersk and the yellow lines.
Yeah.
Some of it is AI.
Yeah.
Some of it is robotics and efficiencies in supply chain that may not require humans to be engaged in lower value activities.
Yeah.
So that's part of it. I think also the Amazon effect, where Amazon now controls so much of the supply chain for such a large portion of commerce and retail, that, and they want to control their supply chain, so they may not be leveraging some of those particular shippers and lines.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's gloom and doom in any way, where we saw, whether it was in Long Beach or here in Oakland, the ports backed up with containers.
Right.
Consumers certainly should not be worried as much as they may have been in the past that they're not going to get their holiday gifts under the tree in time. I don't think that we're going to see as much of that. The bottleneck, or some of the challenges and the costs, are going to continue to be at what we would call the last mile.
Yeah.
And the UPSs and the FedExes and the postal services being able to deliver on the promises and the volume that they see spike at this time of year between now and January 1st. So I think that those are some of the factors that would come into play with what you've seen.
Yeah.
But I don't think we're going to have supply chain issues, and if anything, we may have areas where we have too much product.
So I can tell you on the telco side of the house, and I work with quite a few of those. There is an oversupply problem that's really going right back to OEM. So Nokia, who I have association with, they are really feeling the pain there. So I concur with your analysis. I am glad to hear it's probably, certainly for Yellow and Maersk, it is probably a consolidation that was headed our way, and maybe just a cost optimization play. So hopefully it's nothing, more than that. And, not headlines you ever want to see. FedEx and UPS, to your point, have both issued forward guidance that's, taking the numbers down from at least what they had stated, some quarters back. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on that one, but good to get your take on that. One other area.
I'm not supposed to agree with everything. Aren't we supposed to get into an argument on these podcasts?
I don't disagree. I think it makes sense. So I literally threw those out at you. I came across those and I thought, Michael's the guy to talk to this stuff, because I see everything and I go, oh, all right, I guess the world is truly caving in. So I better sell my 3 shares of Tesla and get out of the market.
Well, I know we wanted to talk about the holiday, and whether it's the National Retail Federation or the U.S. Consensus and Commerce Boards. as well as our old friends at Adobe
Yep.
who put out their holiday forecast.
Yep.
We're looking at about a 4% increase, give or take.
Yep.
Everyone now is kind of hedging their bets, and they
Yep.
say 3 to 5% is what
Yep.
we may see as an increase in holiday sales
Yep.
coming up. The one thing that I'm observing, well, there are two areas I would want to touch on here is different product categories, different demographics, and buying tangible products versus buying experiences.
Ah.
So let me cover it off kind of in those three buckets.
Yeah.
And just in terms of what I've been speaking about, I almost feel like, because I haven't documented this, I need to write a blog about this or something.
Should.
But we've got certain products that are going to continue to do well. We'll see electronics always is big winners at this time of year.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw, Apple had some major announcements in the past less than 2 weeks. I think it was maybe last week.
Yep.
Where they just have some just off the charts new chips in their the MacBooks and the iMac and everything, where just the speeds and the battery power are just off the charts for those that are into Apple products.
Yep.
Luxury, we're seeing a little bit of a rebound.
Mm-hmm.
But we also know that going to the grocery store is more expensive than it was a year ago. So all of these categories are going to be challenged in some way, and some will be the benefactor of what we see going into the holiday. And then, of course, demographically, those that have been challenged or affected by a layoff, they're going to be certainly careful of where they spend. But the market is doing well, right? Stock market just in the past 2 weeks has certainly not hurt those that are investing there. Folks, and this is, I think, from NRF. NRF has indicated that consumers are going to spend as much as $1,000 more this year than last year on holiday gifts. I mean, think about that.
Yeah.
It was 900 and change, I think. That's a lot of money.
It is.
If you think about the averages. So that's not going to be across all demographics, but certainly those that are in a good position. I think there's rebound mentality. We're not in a presidential election year, so there's less anxiety.
Yeah.
I'm sure next year there'll be heightened anxiety as we get closer to November 5th of 2020, it'll be November 5th of 2024.
I think so.
So those factors are involved. And then on the experiential side is, and this is where I'm not sure if we're going to get to that 4 or 5% in holiday sales, because travel, an area that I was responsible for at Adobe, travel is just is really coming back strong.
Mm-hmm.
People are, they know that COVID is behind them. They know they've been perhaps vaccinated, so if, God forbid, they had COVID, they're not going to die from it. Travel is going to take a bite out of some of the spend that somebody may have purchased in goods. Yeah. So I think that there's going to be a variety of factors that indicate whether or not a particular retailer has a strong holiday. Of course, the holiday is extended.
Right.
It already started. We're here recording this on November the 8th, but the holiday started a month ago in October. We had Amazon Prime Days in the, what was that, the 10th and the 11th, or the 11th and the 12th?
Yeah.
So the season is elongated. Everybody's trying to get a bite out of it.
Yeah.
There are always going to be some winners and losers, and those that deliver a better experience. And I know I've lived the experience thing, but I believe it. I not just drank the Kool-Aid of Adobe.
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
if I deliver better experience in the shopping experience, in the shopping process, in the fulfillment process, in the post-purchase,
Yeah.
then I'm more than likely to maintain my customers and grow customers as I go through the season.
Let's talk a little bit about that because that's near and dear to my heart too. And certainly, I think we follow a similar path to what you've gone through in terms of marketing technology and how that supports retail, CPG, luxury. We're undergoing a very similar revolution in media and entertainment, and I think to an extent the telcos are jumping on board, but certainly nowhere near the velocity of the media and entertainment organizations. And I like you, I've done my thing for quite a time, and I think back to the 90s when I was kind of a cub consultant working for PricewaterhouseCoopers. We'd go into Universal and the conversation was very much, ERP remediation, data silos. I mean, ho hum. And they didn't want to hear about everything. This is in the era of physical media. So, just a different time. Now, I can't think of very many kind of industries as a whole. Certainly yours is there that are advancing in terms of their technological underpinnings to better understand the customer. And so that has been a revolution for the likes of Netflix, for Disney streaming, for relationships with park customers across the board. And so it does factor in a lot of what we did at Adobe, I think applies here. I'd say the grand revolution for me, the thing that I keep my eye on is this idea of platform, which is to say, an aggregation of data in an intelligent way where you're able to link it back to the device level and then aggregate in the case of a multiple device entity like myself, like you, like most of our families, we're all running 2, 3, 4, 5 devices. So being able to understand, okay, well, at this point in the day, Mike's on his phone. At this point in the day, he's on his laptop. In the evening, he's sitting in front of a flat screen. And so figuring out, my day, what I'm looking at any part of the day, and then figuring out demographically, what am I inclined to watch, buy, participate in on that journey. And so I think for me, platform is the real big thing to build on and optimize. And we were beginning to do that, I think, in our time at Adobe, but love your take and kind of making that relevant back into retail CPG. And feel free to disagree if it's not platform. But to me, I think leveraging that. And then, of course, we had all our applications that sit on top of platform. But once you get that right, it gets a lot easier, this idea of really nailing down the customer and figuring out what they're all about. But interested in your world on that. I think that's for me, it's a small revolution at a minimum.
Yeah, I guess this is where we can start to argue because
Good.
I think now that I've left the mothership,
Yeah.
It's not a one size fits all. That's probably the thing that would be the first comment I throw out there when I hear platform. The other side of the coin of the equation that is the reality in most industries and most businesses, and retail in particular, is what does it take to put in the platform?
Yeah.
What do I have to undo to take advantage of that? And is that worth is there enough juice for the squeeze to unravel everything I've been doing for the past 20 years?
Yeah.
So, and there certainly are many businesses, enterprises, our customers that have gone down that path.
Yeah.
I'd say that I don't know if I would want to put a percentage on it, but again, it's not a one size fits all where that might make sense to go platform if legacy technology has just not been maintained.
Yeah.
And you just got to get rid of it. And it's just, and here is this platform with associated solutions that can maybe take me 24 months to get everything in place.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be in a much better place if I pull the trigger now and do that rather than try to do it bit by bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense.
And then there's the other mentality where there is best of breed in many point solutions. And depending on what my goals are and what I'm trying to accomplish, I might be able to get there with a very strategic series of technologies that are going to move the needle of my business.
Yeah.
And I don't have to rip and replace and put in this whole big monolithic platform.
Yeah.
So, that's the thing that comes up for me.
Yeah.
And then going back to the idea of Gen AI or any artificial intelligence being traditional or Gen, many of the best of breed solutions that are being brought to market offer AI as part of the solution.
Yeah.
So I don't need to have a platform that promises to do everything for me and bring me AI, because more often than not, a lot of these point solutions are going to have some element of AI that comes along with it.
Yeah.
And then the data piece, the unified profile, the customer, understanding all the different touch points, that's important.
Yeah.
But what's more important is context, I think.
Yeah.
And this has been a big conversation around retail, that I may be able to put you into a segment or into a group based on previous activities and transactions, behaviors. But does that always indicate what my current state of mind is? So really being able to take some of that historical and blend it and match it with real-time in-context signals is critical.
Yeah.
Because if I'm only delivering personalization and experiences, engagement on what I know about you from 24 hours, 24 days, 24 months ago, I may be missing the mark. So, one of my analyst friends has a great statement that is, no personalization is better than bad personalization.
I have to agree there. Yeah. And I think you touch on something really interesting to me, and it's not that we weren't doing this as marketers a long time ago, 20 years ago. I think in terms of, so if I'm trying to define a subscriber group, I'm aggregating data, whatever I've collected, hopefully a good array of different attributes per a certain demographic. And then I, work through that. It's a K-means cluster, right? I mean, that's really what we're outputting to. How I define that cluster, the attributes that inform that. What we've done with the machine learning, the AI, is being able to output to that much more quickly. And then hopefully act and decide what campaign activity we're going to do, what targeting we're going to do, all these types of things. So I think it is, to your earlier point, it's a speed issue. It's an accuracy issue. So instead of defining 6 demographic archetypes, I can now define 60, which gets me to be much more of an accurate marketer. To your point of, let's call it quality, right? So I watch Major League Baseball, I watch college football, I do this. So I'm likely to like these other things, and you can decide how to market to me. If you market to me with, I still call it soccer. I know it's football, but you're not going to hit the mark, right? And it's just because of who I am and what I like. And so I think there's an accuracy to this, and that would be a miss for me to say, well, if he likes college football and baseball, then he likes sports, so therefore soccer's good. Well, no. So I think, layered in what you're saying is there's a lot of this. I guess we're able to hopefully do a lot of this more quickly, a lot of this more accurately, and we'll see. And by the way, not shilling for the old firm, Salesforce is out there doing this. Listen, all of the sort of major web scalers have a toe in the water at a minimum here. And we're talking a lot about B2C interactions. I think when you break out into the world of, we have colleagues who work much more in the B2B space, high tech, et cetera. It's a different thing, So then you enter into the fray Azure, AWS, etc. It gets the waters get muddy pretty quickly on generic platform discussions. But anyways, appreciate your points on that.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting evolution. Let's remember that it was not too long ago that everybody, especially in your world, right, were talking about DMPs, that
Yeah.
acronym, data
Yes.
management platform.
Yes.
And then it evolved to CDP, a customer data platform.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
and data lakes, and who knows what's on the horizon, because there's a lot of opinion that, yeah, customer data platform could be important, but do I really need it if I have the information I need? And so we'll see. It's you know, I feel kind of somewhat relieved that I don't have to just get behind one frame of mind or one mentality, because I'm
Yeah.
a big believer that there's a lot of nuances to each of these businesses, and to your point, B2C versus B2B,
Yeah.
heavy industrial manufacturing, media and entertainment, and
Yeah.
sports, and being in venue. Those requirements are much different than
Yeah.
I buy a bunch of products, I put them in a warehouse, and my inventory can sit around for 3 months. And
Yeah.
the inventory for media and entertainment is pretty perishable, right? I
It is.
mean, I can't, if I don't sell that seat today,
Yeah.
I can't sell it tomorrow.
That's right. Yep.
Same
Yep.
as travel, right?
Sure.
If I don't fill the plane today,
Yeah.
that seat it expires. It's like
Yeah.
a bad black banana that I can't sell.
Yeah, no doubt about that. No, it's first and foremost. I was chuckling to myself. It had this image of dead data lake projects lying on the bottom of an actual lake, like Lake Michigan, like the wreckage of all those ships, Edmund Fitzgerald or something. Like, I cannot tell you, Michael, at Gartner, the kind of, it was like a more counseling than actual stewardship and guidance. It was kind of, yeah, I hate to tell you this. I don't think we're going to be able to map this data lake project to any tangible goals or objectives. You may want to just like pull the ripcord and tell the Apache guys to go home at this point, and is that like, we're a year and a half in. Like, yeah. Okay. So, well, just think about it. Talk to you next month. So, yeah, I know it's incredibly, good points you make. And I think you bring this background to your clients now in an incredible way. And I think they're going to benefit from working with you and gaining this type of insight that you've come through on the journey that we discussed. And I listen, like I say, I've always benefited from speaking to you on these things, and I always learn something. And it's, we don't always agree on everything, actually, and off mic, I think we get into it, and I think that's part of the, call it, Socratic crucible that we put each other through. And I've always enjoyed that about you. And I like the challenge you bring to my ideas. So this has been incredibly rich conversation. I wanted to, you do some things, in your personal life that I find very interesting, and back to embracing that idea of risk taking. I think you bring a lot of that willing to do intrepid things to your personal life, in terms of bringing that positive change to the world. I wonder if you might, talk a little bit about, I believe you and your wife work on this endeavor, but I'll let you kind of delve into that, please.
Well, there are two things, three, and we've already talked about one of them, but outside of my professional life, my world outside of my family revolves, and included with my family, revolves around three things. One is food, the other is baseball, and the third, which is what you're referencing, is the work that my wife and I do here in Oakland with the animal rescue.
Yeah.
Back in 2016 was where we started our journey. We had already had adopted a dog in 2011. Before 2010, we lived in a home that didn't allow pets, and we always wanted a dog. So we adopted our first rescue in 2011, which was, ROG and our family pet. And then 2016, my wife and I were in New York. We were having dinner while I was at a trade show, and we got a email alert about a dog that had been surrendered, was possibly going to be euthanized. And he was a senior dog that it was really quite a awful story in that he was what's known as a survivor, which means his owner passed away. And the family had given the real estate agent instructions to euthanize the dog.
Oh my.
And the real estate agent wouldn't do that because she was also involved in this particular rescue.
Yeah.
So that was our first foray into rescuing senior dogs. At that time, Skipper was 12 years old. And Skipper was with us for a little less than 2 years. And then in 2017, when Skipper passed, we then got our next senior rescue, Bella. And ever since that, over the past few years, we've been very involved in fostering and adopting dogs that get passed over because they're a little bit longer in the tooth, a little bit grayer, and there's a yin and a yang to it. And that is, we know that we're giving the pet a home for the rest of their life. But it can be kind of challenging and difficult because you get close to these animals and you know that you only have a limited time with them. So, but it's very rewarding. We right now, as we opened our show and Milo made his appearance, I've got 3 dogs all over 10 years old in my house, and we love it. And we take some of the dogs that are in the rescue that have not been adopted or fostered yet. We'll take them on field trips, let them get out for a few hours, and do whatever we can to support the overcrowded animal rescues that we have here. And it's well documented that all the rescues across the United States right now are challenged with space, and it's just an awful situation. So we're doing our best to try to alleviate as much of that pressure and take care of as many dogs and get a few of them out every now and then. And one other quick note, our rescue from 2022, his name is King.
Yeah.
He's an 80-pound pit bull. He is the sweetest dog you've ever met.
Oh.
And he is now, he also has only one eye because he had a very infected eye that had to be taken. He is now a certified therapy dog. So he goes to schools and senior assisted living homes and makes the day a little bit brighter for some of those residents and students. And that's another great thing that, and my wife is primarily involved, but I'm also involved in some of these activities. But that's another great thing that we're able to give back is how King has now become a therapy dog. And he's got a great story because he was found tied to a pole here in the streets of Oakland, and nobody knows what his history is, but he is a very well behaved, sweet, very large older gentleman.
Oh, that's fantastic. What is there? I assume there's if we can put a link up, if people are so inclined, they can go donate. I'm sure any kind of, even small financial resources people can move towards the shelter's direction.
Here in my area, there are 3 that we support. The primary one is Oakland Animal Services.
Okay.
The other is Hop Along Rescue.
Yeah.
And then the third, which is I donate. We don't do as much work with, but we support is called
Yeah.
ARF, ARF,
Yeah.
Animal Rescue Foundation.
Yeah.
And there's a little ARF. Since we're baseball guys, ARF is Tony La Russa's, the former
Yeah.
manager of the Cardinals and the
Yeah.
Dodgers
A's.
and the A's.
Yep.
That's his. It's well known that he's very involved in animal rescue,
Oh,
and
that's
he has
awesome.
his own. It's called, and that's his ARF.
Good, good. No, that's I'll say we'll put some links up in the little header section there, and if people are so inclined, please encourage you to go donate either time or money or whatever things that you may be able to send to those three organizations' way. Definitely want to call out your new endeavor, Klein for Retail, and really encourage people to reach out to Michael for all things. We're just scratching the surface. I mean, there's so much to talk about and so little time. I hate to kind of truncate this, but I really encourage, folks who are building out in any sort of capacity against your retail CPG or luxury go-to-market objectives. Michael's the guy, in my opinion, and I highly recommend engaging him, at least for, initial consultation. Make sure you're headed in the right direction on building out the MarTech stack, figuring out, what makes more sense, a bias towards retail bricks and mortar, a bias towards online, etc. Michael's the guy to answer these questions for you. So we'll also put a link up on how to engage Michael there. Other than that, Michael, this has been a lot of fun. Obviously, very illuminating. Again, as I say, I learn something every time I talk to you. Let's do this again when we kind of get through the Q4 shopping season. We can kind of evaluate and do a little post-game armchair quarterbacking, right? As we're inclined to do as sports fans and fans of business. And love to have you back, and we'll kind of do a recap once we get through the season.
Let's do a Valentine's episode, and we
Love
can
it.
wear red, and it'll be after the holiday season and after the Super Bowl.
Perfect opportunity, I think. Definitely. That would be perfect. Look forward to it. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast today. Look forward to our next conversation. Really appreciate your time and sharing with us as you have.
No, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun, and I know we'll be speaking outside of this podcast in the very near future. So
Guaranteed.
all the best to you and your family for the holidays.
Yep. Likewise. Have a good one.